Thank you for joining the Boston Zoning Commission public hearing, which is being held virtually to ensure the continued safety of the public, staff members, and the Boston Zoning Commissioners. The open meeting law requires that I notify the public that this virtual meeting is being recorded. Please be advised that an audio and video recording of this meeting is being made. At this time, I'm going to have our interpreters introduce themselves for the meeting.
Terrific. Let's go Carla, then Jesse, then Avon.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Carla Rivera. I'm the Spanish interpreter.
Good morning. My name is Jessie Elam. I'm the Mandarin interpreter.
Good morning. My name is Avon. I'm the Cantonese interpreter. Please allow me to introduce myself in Cantonese. 大家早晨啊，我叫 Avon 啊，我係你今日你嘅廣州話翻譯啊。一陣間喺翻譯開始之後咧，你可以喺畫面上見到個地球小地球嘅，點入去之後咧就可以聽到我廣州話翻譯啦。
Okay, thank you very much. I'll now take a roll call of the zoning commissioners. Jill Hatton.
Present.
Michael DeMella.
Present.
Nelson Arroyo.
Present.
Drew Leff. I saw Drew. Drew.
Present.
Aisha Miller. Aisha. Midori Morikawa.
Present.
Ricardo Ostrich.
Present.
And Jay Hurley, I'm present. How about Aisha? Aisha here yet?
I don't see you here yet, Jay. I'll text her.
Okay, no problem. We have enough to start the meeting. 9 o'clock public hearing. This is a hearing before the Boston Zoning Commission to consider a petition for the approval of text amendment application number 773 with respect to the East Boston zoning. The hearing was duly advertised April 1st, 2024 in the Boston Herald. In the Boston Zoning Commission hearing on petitions, the proponents will first present their case as subject to questioning by members of the commission only. We are taking support and opposition at the same time. If you're planning to testify, please take the time to verify your computer and microphone is active. Click the hand icon on your Zoom control panel. This will signal staff you would like to speak. When your hand is raised, your hand icon will be blue. If you are calling into the meeting and would like to testify, please dial *9 to raise your hand. When I call for public testimony, a member of the staff will announce your name and allow you to speak. You must unmute your microphone. Your webcam will not be active. Please state your full name, any group affiliation, and announce whether you support or oppose the petition. Each speaker will be allowed up to 2 minutes. If necessary, I will advise you when you have 30 seconds remaining. At that point, please summarize your remarks so the meeting can continue and others may be heard. Finally, the proponents are allowed a brief 5 to 10 minute period for rebuttal if they so desire. Please begin the presentation.
Wonderful. Good morning, everyone. My name is Cyrus Maselli, and I am the Zoning Reform Planning Assistant for the BPDA. It's a pleasure to be here this morning with the Commission. I'm joined today by Kathleen Onifer, the BPDA's Deputy Director of Zoning, and Christina Rico, former Senior Planner in the Planning Department, now in Urban Design and the Project Manager of Plan East Boston, to walk through the contents of the proposed East Boston zoning amendments. These amendments seek to codify the land use and built form recommendations of Plan East Boston and are proposed to be implemented through zoning amendments to Article 53, East Boston's neighborhood zoning article. Before diving in, though, I want to hand over the mic to Christina to discuss some of the planning context behind Plan East Boston.
Thank you, Cyrus.
Thank you, Cyrus. Good morning, Commissioners. Next slide, please, Joanne. Plan East Boston is a neighborhood-wide planning initiative to guide growth. The BPDA initiated the plan following a City Council hearing in the summer of 2018, sponsored by then City Councilor, now Senator Edwards, and the then Chair of the Committee on Planning, Development, and Transportation, now Mayor Wu, calling on the BPDA and all relevant City of Boston departments to confront the many challenges facing the East Boston community, naming specifically the pressures of growth, the threat of climate change, and the need for planning that prioritizes equity, resilience, and quality of life. Following 6 years of community engagement, the BPDA Board adopted the plan on January 18th, 2024. The plan area includes the entirety of the neighborhood except for Logan Airport and the Suffolk Downs redevelopment site. The sum 2 square miles included in the plan is home to more than 47,000 residents. It's connected to the cities of Boston, Chelsea, and Revere, and the town of Winthrop by no fewer than 3 tunnels, 3 bridges, and a highway. It's serviced by 5 stops on the MBTA Blue Line, and more than 12 miles of coastline front 2 major bodies of water and the city's last remaining salt marsh. To call this a neighborhood plan somehow falls short of the reality of our scope. East Boston truly is a microcosm of every challenge and opportunity that seems to exist in the city at large. Next slide, please. Long-range planning for East Boston exists at the intersection of 2 of Boston's most challenging and urgent issues. After decades of population decline, East Boston is growing, faster even than the city at large. Despite shifts in demographic composition, immigrant populations have remained central to the narrative of the East Boston community, and today it is one of Boston's most diverse neighborhoods. While growth has brought welcome investment to the neighborhood, it has presented new challenges. For example, increased demand for housing has increased housing costs, and new development has put pressure on existing transportation and open space infrastructure. Simultaneously, threats posed by climate change, including sea level rise, increased precipitation, and extreme heat, pose considerable risks to this waterfront neighborhood. These converging trends, growing in-migration to a community at risk of displacement, and increased demand for land uniquely vulnerable to the threat of climate change, are a key consideration of this plan. Urgent action is needed to support neighborhood growth that is predictable, sustainable, and accessible to all members of the East Boston community. Next slide, please. Engagement events were designed to reach a wide range of participants, and special effort was made to engage groups typically underrepresented in planning processes. Engagement events included in-person workshops, open houses, neighborhood walking tours, and chat with a planner and pop-up events. Spanish language access, including translated materials and simultaneous interpretation services, was provided at all in-person and virtual events. BPDA staff regularly attended neighborhood and civic association meetings and other community-hosted events. The effort was supported by a 20-person advisory group composed of East Boston residents, business owners, and community leaders appointed by elected officials. Next slide, please. The sum 180 pages of material is organized by character area, which help identify places within the neighborhood, including neighborhood residential areas appearing here in yellow, the largest geography by far in the plan, squares and corridors appearing here in red, and evolving industrial areas appearing here in purple, addressing the neighborhood's waterfront and economic development subdistricts. Character areas were further refined into 17 geographic sub-areas within the plan. Next slide. The recommendations focus on the tools most readily available: public realm improvements, including near and long-term transportation improvements, and land use and built form regulations, i.e. zoning. We have also included recommendations for policy and program considerations that reach further than the limits of these tools and, in some cases, the geographic limit of the neighborhood, presenting ambitious, big picture opportunities. Next slide. East Boston's transportation and public realm recommendations are comprehensive, spanning all character areas and touching upon topics that are neighborhood or even regional in scale. In neighborhood residential areas, recommendations prioritize quality of life and safe transitions from major corridors. This means more traffic calming, smaller intersections with more greenery, and better access to bike and car share. The plan reimagines squares and corridors as dynamic gathering places for people, served by expanded and more frequent transit, and made safer with simpler intersections and more crossings. Within waterfront and evolving industrial character areas, the plan links climate-ready Boston recommendations for coastal resilience with modernized bridges and corridors, or even new regional transit connections. Throughout all character areas, the plan emphasizes strategies to manage stormwater, protect from coastal flooding, and reduce the extreme heat island effect. Next slide, please. Additionally, we've included far-reaching program and policy recommendations to communicate big picture, interdepartmental considerations that at times look beyond the 30-year timeline of the plan and even the boundaries of the neighborhood itself. These program and policy considerations demonstrate the city's commitment to supporting existing residents and growth of small business and creative enterprises, and present bold and ambitious ideas, including but not limited to transformation of the Blue Line and the Route 1A corridor. And with that, I'm happy to pass this back to Cyrus.
Thanks, Christina. Can we go to the next slide, please? Right, so jumping into our zoning discussion, I think firstly it's important to note that East Boston's current zoning does not reflect what exists there today. Article 53 was adopted more than 30 years ago at this point. And since then, East Boston's built context has evolved significantly. Zoning, however, has not kept up with the pace. Today, East Boston relies more heavily on the ZBA than almost anywhere in the city. In fact, over the past year, East Boston has seen the second highest number of non-compliant projects proposed, falling only behind Dorchester, which is Boston's largest and most populous neighborhood. So, adjusting for size and population, East Boston's rate of regulatory nonconformity would be even more pronounced on this chart. This reliance on the ZBA has done a number of things, but it's created unpredictability mostly in neighborhood development patterns and generally signals a need for zoning reform. So the proposed amendments to Article 53 that we're bringing to you today seek to remedy this condition. Next slide, please. At a bird's eye view, the proposed zoning amendments do a few things. They, one, recalibrate residential zoning to better reflect East Boston's existing built form. Two, provide opportunities for new mixed-use development to occur in specific geographies in direct proximity to transit. Three, encourage active streets by relaxing commercial land use allowances and amending parking requirements. And four, simplify and modernize zoning to improve accessibility to the code and better align regulation with current best practices, as well as the BPDA's ongoing zoning reform efforts. These goals and their associated regulatory updates were developed in very close collaboration with the East Boston community and were iterated over several months of open comment period and through engagement in 2023. Next slide, please. Jumping into some of the specific recommendations here. Amendments to Article 53, firstly, simplify land use regulation across the neighborhood. Currently, East Boston's use tables comprise over 200 individual use types. Our proposal updates East Boston's use tables by consolidating similar use types, removing obsolete or overly specific uses, and making use definitions more clear and easier to understand. In all, these updates cut the number of existing use categories in half, while retaining the same clarity and specificity in land use regulation determined through the Plan East Boston planning process. In addition, while the updates pursued are specific to East Boston, they are also more closely aligned with the agency's broader zoning reform efforts, structurally mirroring the table format adopted as a part of the Squares and Streets zoning amendment that the Commission heard last week. This update helps create consistency in regulatory structure across the zoning code and alleviates any possible confusion or conflict that may arise from having to navigate or interpret slightly different tables or uses in different parts of the code. Next slide. Moving to residential zoning, the proposed amendments consolidate residential subdistricts from 10 existing to 3 proposed. These amendments also propose right-sized and more flexible dimensional regulations and relax commercial land use allowances throughout the neighborhood's residential fabric to allow for the by-right development of small-scale retail and service establishments on corner lots in lower density areas and across the ground floors of lots in higher density areas. The goal of these updates is to provide for more predictable and appropriately scaled infill development that also has the potential to support gentle increases in occupancy and scale, and as well to bring essential goods and services closer to the front doors of East Boston residents. Next slide, please. Here you can see the 3 new residential subdistricts proposed for East Boston, including the East Boston Residential, or EBR 2.5, EBR 3, and EBR 4 subdistricts. And as you'll note, the number ascribed to the subdistricts' names corresponds to the permitted height in stories for each. And you can see some precedent examples on the slide of the kind of development that will be permitted within each of these subdistricts. Next slide, please. On dimensions, simplified dimensional requirements for residential subdistricts remove maximum FAR and minimum lot size, lot width, and usable open space as dimensional regulators. These account for a number of East Boston's most common zoning violations. And in their place, more variable form-based items, including maximum building lot coverage, minimum permeable area of lot, maximum building width and depth, maximum floor plate size will take their place. These updates offer greater flexibility for lots of different sizes and were crafted with East Boston's existing context in mind to better standardize the way build form across the neighborhood is scaled and regulated. Next slide, please. Now to mixed-use zoning. So as the term may suggest, mixed-use zoning allows for a range of residential and commercial uses to coexist in the same place. And in East Boston is generally concentrated around the neighborhood squares and transit hubs. It's in these areas that active ground floor retail, commercial uses, and housing can be supported by slightly higher density. These new mixed-use subdistricts replace the neighborhood shopping, community commercial, and multifamily residential / local shopping subdistrict types previously listed in the neighborhood zoning. Next slide, please. So as I stated, we proposed 3 different mixed-use subdistrict types for East Boston. And like the residential subdistricts, the number tied to the name refers to the maximum allowed height and stories in each. So as you can see, we have a 4-story, a 5-story, and a 7-story subdistrict. And on the slide, you can see some precedent examples of the kind of development that will be permitted within each of these subdistricts. Next slide, please. The proposed mixed-use zoning also includes updated dimensional requirements, structured similarly to those detailed in residential areas. So these updates introduce more flexible form-based regulations that more accurately scale development across variable lot sizes and also seek to prioritize and support the development of East Boston's public realm with the inclusion of not only a minimum permeable area of lot, regulation, but to a minimum outdoor amenity space requirement as well. Next slide, please. Mixed-use zoning applies to East Boston's key squares. So Maverick Square, Central Square, Day Square, and Orient Heights Square. And the subdistricts ascribed to these areas relate not only to the existing built form and development patterns within them, but are also scaled in relation to the built context of the surrounding neighborhood residential areas as well, as a means of providing more gentle transitions between higher and lower density districts. Next slide. Moving to the waterfront, draft zoning proposes to consolidate the number of waterfront subdistrict types from 6 to 2 to create new waterfront mixed-use areas and waterfront economy areas. These amendments also implement modest increases to permitted height and density along the waterfront and relax land uses to permit a variety of previously forbidden active commercial uses. Before diving into some of the more specific regulatory updates proposed for the waterfront, it's important to note that the majority of East Boston's waterfront remains subject to the regulations of state-controlled designated port areas. These regulations severely limit allowed land uses along the waterfront and ultimately supersede Boston zoning. Plan East Boston advocates for amendments to these recommendations and implements zoning that is more reflective of the community's vision for the waterfront so that if or when those state level controls are removed, more appropriate regulation is already in place and ready to go. Next slide. Looking at some of those more specific notes, the proposed zoning for the waterfront sets a 5-story, 65-foot height threshold for development with a maximum FAR of 2.0. And as previously stated, the use tables for waterfront subdistricts, especially in waterfront economic areas, have also been updated to permit a more diverse mix of essential economic activities, as well as forbidding low traffic, high impact uses, such as things like self-storage. And only waterfront mixed use subdistricts allow for the development of residential uses. Next slide, please. And finally, at least in the geographic updates, updates to East Boston's economic development areas. So similar to the waterfront subdistricts, proposed zoning relaxes land use allowances for EDAs to encourage a greater mix of commercial activity to take root. The zoning also proposes to retire East Boston's corridor enhancement subdistrict, dividing the geography into a new open space subdistrict for the Mary Ellen Welch Greenway and 2 new economic development areas, which are we are calling the Porter Street EDA and the Bremen Street EDA. And multifamily residential uses will be permitted in both of those new EDAs, as well as in the Saratoga Street EDA, where they were previously forbidden. Next slide, please. On dimensional requirements, the underlying zoning for EDAs, with the exception of the Porter Street and Suffolk Downs EDAs, have been capped at 5 stories and 65 feet in height with a maximum FAR of 2.0. The regulations of the Porter Street EDA vary due to the site's proximity to the Mary Ellen Welch Greenway, and the Suffolk Down EDA's existing dimensional regulations are proposed to remain due to the site's existing regulatory approvals. The proposed PDA dimensions for EDAs grant additional flexibility for certain areas identified in the plan that can support additional density and be leveraged to help provide the neighborhood with needed public benefits. Next slide. In addition to these more geographically based recommendations, at least again in terms of looking at type and subdistricts, proposed zoning also updates regulations for sites within East Boston's Coastal Flood Resilience Overlay District. These updates prohibit the erection or extension of residential uses below the sea level rise design flood elevation for projects in the seafront in East Boston. Currently, these regulations only apply to Article 80 scale projects in East Boston, but this update expands applicability to encompass all residential projects, regardless of scale. And this is a particularly important update given East Boston's vulnerability to rising sea levels. Of note, this prohibition of living space below the design flood elevation will only apply to projects proposed after the zoning's adoption. As such, pre-existing non-conforming living spaces will be exempt from these provisions, as will things be things like parking, storage, lobbies, and commercial space, which do not count as living space. We're talking about bedrooms, living rooms, etc. Additionally, while these provisions change the calculation of building height for applicable projects, that change is building height is measured from the design flood elevation instead of grade or at the sidewalk. Anyways, despite that, our analysis shows us that there are no parcels within East Boston's residential fabric where we're most concerned about height that sit at an elevation deep enough to enable additional floors of height, meaning that the height thresholds established by underlying zoning for these neighborhood residential areas will be able to hold as they are written. Next slide. Additionally, several other policy-based regulatory updates were pursued as a part of these amendments. A few of these include: 1, updated parking requirements, which remove parking minimums for mixed-use subdistricts and amend all other parking minimums figures to align with the Boston Transportation Department's existing maximum parking ratios. 2, considerable text updates, which modernize policy, remove outdated language, and cut the length of Article 53 in half, which is very important for accessibility. And 3, updated roof structure restrictions, which now align regulation with building code requirements, and additionally permit the by right development of rooftop solar energy systems. Next slide. And I want to close out by reviewing our zoning amendment process and engagement timeline here. So, as Christina noted earlier, Plan East Boston went through a robust and comprehensive engagement process as a part of its 5+ year development. And I want to make clear to the commission that the same can be said for the proposed amendments in front of you today. The zoning went through several months of independent engagement and vetting with various stakeholders in the community before moving forward to the BPDA board for approval. This process included an 100+ day public comment period, several public meetings, and the release of multiple drafts of the zoning, which were marked up, discussed, and iterated upon in conjunction with the East Boston community. Staff also held several zoning-specific office hour dates for the public to join in on, and attended a plethora of community-led events and civic association meetings to present our proposed materials. We received a lot of valuable feedback through that process, including after our initial BPDA board approval, which heavily informed the recommendations we've brought to you today. Next slide. And with that, we'll close our presentation. Thank you very much. And Kathleen, Christina, and I are available to answer any questions the commission may have.
Thank you, Cyrus. Thank you, Kathleen and Christina. Questions, comments from the commission?
I just have a quick question, Cyrus, on your slide that you just presented on the Suffolk Downs EDA forbidding residential, I think it said, but the Suffolk Downs PDA provides for significant residential development. And I just wanted to, could you just clarify why in the EDA there's a forbidden residential notation?
Sure, that's the underlying like a use table. So the EDA itself prohibits residential use, but because the PDA becomes an overlay on top of that, residential uses are allowed through the PDA.
Through the PDA. Okay, thank you very much. I just wanted to make sure they were maintained because that's a significant amount of residential.
Yes, we
dialed
made
in.
we made no changes to the Suffolk Downs EDA use or dimensional tables.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions, comments? Hearing none. Any public testimony, Jeff?
Yeah, we have a few raised hands, Mr. Chairman. First, I want to call on Ellie Sanchez. Ellie, go ahead. Unmute yourself.
Can everyone hear me?
Yes, Ellie.
Awesome. Good morning, everyone, members of the Boston Zoning Commission. I'm here. My name is Ellie Sanchez. I am Chief of Staff for Councilor Gabriela Coletta. Councilor Gabriela Coletta really wanted to be here, but she is unfortunately, or fortunately, at the Mayor's Coffee Hour in Charlestown. So I will be here on her behalf. She would like me to read the letter she sent to the Zoning Commission in its entirety. So I will start on that. Members of the Boston Zoning Commission, please consider this correspondence as you consider the zoning text amendment of Article 53, East Boston Neighborhood District from Plan East Boston. This letter is a culmination of hundreds of conversations, numerous letters, and negotiations spanning 5 years with elected officials, BPDA staff, and the community members. The East Boston Master Plan was announced in 2018 to act as a comprehensive framework that would guide neighborhood growth. This master planning process was a welcomed and necessary initiative during what was a watershed moment in East Boston's history as it related to development and construction. The plan sought to create predictability within zoning and consistency in the public realm for projected periods of future growth based on past trends. Over the last 2 decades, East Boston's net annual population growth has remained higher than the city's average, with 42% increase in rent prices from 2000 to 2017. As our population grew, so did the number of development proposals looking to lessen demand on the existing housing stock and accommodate the massive population increase. Unfortunately, East Boston's archaic zoning code lacked relevance to modern conformity or regulatory restrictions for development to occur in a responsible manner. This provided developers and land use attorneys the opportunity to take advantage of an outdated code to the detriment of the community. Moreover, multiple iterations of the Zoning Board of Appeals, ZBA, membership allowed for precedent-setting exceptions or variances of hardship and made them the rule. For many years in East Boston, zoning occurred on an ad hoc basis, which led to the irresponsible proposals inconsistent with existing design or uses. Over the last 5 years, the community, elected officials, and the BPDA sought to correct this by ensuring that planning would dictate development, not the other way around. The status quo was not sustainable, and a framework like the one provided in Plan East Boston would create predictability residents long for while following their lead in defining what East Boston should look like for generations to come. There were multiple stages of the planning process, which included 3 separate community engagement processes: establishing existing conditions, identifying challenges and opportunities, and imagining the future. Following the release of the first draft in 2022, there were a number of concerns related to height, density, and many others that were expressed by members of the community. The East Boston delegation heeded those concerns and advocated for meaningful changes directly to the mayor and the BPDA. We fought extremely hard for East Boston and ultimately moved many aspects of the plan to an iteration that is truly reflective of what residents wanted. We pushed for zoning in residential areas consistent with neighborhood context, while setting a ceiling for height, density, and setbacks for future development, appropriate transition zones between subdistricts, protected the entirety of the Mary Ellen Walsh Greenway from irresponsible height and density levels that would wall off the rest of the neighborhood from this vital open space, promoted the vibrancy of major squares and corridors by allowing for commercial space with uses that are critical to the neighborhood, established maximum heights where the BPDA holds unique powers in special zones like economic development areas and planned development areas. It is vital that the Zoning Board of Appeals be held accountable to hold and enforce these zoning changes approved by the BPDA and this commission should it codify the proposed text amendment. It would be devastating for the ZBA to unravel 5 years of deep partnership and ultimately wasting valuable city resources by granting variances to the new rules we created together. While the VPDA began with a $450,000 budget, spending for this plan resulted in hundreds of thousands of dollars in consulting and staff resources, hundreds of events and meetings, and thousands of conversations over the span of 5 years. Lack of enforcement of these zoning changes would be fiscally irresponsible, culminating in waste of taxpayer dollars and time spent in setting the ceiling and vision for East Boston's future. Unfortunately, there is already a concern that the ZBA will approve variances that are not in line with this text amendment. After the VPDA board approved Plan East Boston in January, my staff attended a ZBA hearing on March 12th to speak in opposition of 141 Addison Street due to misalignment with the plan. However, despite community opposition, the board approved the proposal. This is a concerning precedent for the ZBA to set that must be addressed if the zoning text amendment is approved. I have made a direct request of Chief of Planning Arthur Jemison to provide a written letter to the ZBA that sets collective expectations that they will not continue to grant variances based on undefined hardships. Chief Jemison has expressed the BPDA's commitment to upholding and enforcing these provisions through the design review process, impact discussions, and written recommendations to the ZBA. However, I believe that holding the ZBA accountable to new zoning regulations will require specific and transparent parameters to ensure we do not repeat egregious variance approvals that led to the need for the creation of this plan. A letter to the ZBA must clearly and strongly uphold new zoning. The East Boston community is disproportionately impacted by the highest number of allowed variances in the city of Boston and demands respect for the work that has been done to date. Thank you to the community members who have spent countless hours with us working to make this plan the best possible deal it can be for East Boston. I want to acknowledge all the staff who worked on this plan within the BPDA, namely Jason Ruggiero, Christina Rico, and Nick Schmidt. I thank them for their dedication and to getting it right on behalf of the community and their partnership with the East Boston delegation. East Boston now has the framework necessary to preserve, enhance, and grow in a responsible manner, which will ultimately serve the community well now and in the future. Sincerely, Gabriela Coletta. Thank you.
Thank you, Ellie.
Okay, next, Richard Lins. Richard, go ahead.
Thank you, Jeff. Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the board and commission. My name is Richard Lins. I'm a zoning and land use attorney with a practice that focuses mainly on the city of Boston, especially the neighborhood of East Boston. My office is located at 245 Sumner Street, which is in East Boston's Jeffreys Point. Mr. Chairman, as someone who has regularly dealt with the challenges of zoning and land use planning in the East Boston community over the last 27 years, I also want to thank the BPDA staff for their diligent efforts on the challenging task of completing this process that will create better predictability for planning and development for the East Boston neighborhood. Overall, I see the amendments to Article 53 not only reflect how the future of East Boston will be developed, but also provides a number of important tools that developers will be able to better rely on in planning projects without uncertainty that comes along with seeking variances from the Board of Appeal. While there is always room for improvement, the overall goals that were laid out during the Plan East Boston process were certainly met, and the amendments will hopefully help bridge the gap between the expectations of residents and the development community and reduce the extent of zoning relief that is needed for the community's future growth. For these reasons, I'd like to be recorded in support of the proposed amendments and thank the Commission's time for allowing me to speak. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard.
Okay, next is Chris Dreyer. Chris, go ahead.
Oh, hello, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, all right. Hi. Briefly, I'll make a few points here to be with respect of everyone's time. First, during the presentation, I often commute with the Blue Line and do appreciate its ease of access and use. Within the scope of the BPDA's authority and also responsibility and obligation, I also was I'm not really curious, but like interested to learn if there are any projected representations or plans for Wood Island. I believe it's a similar stop to Maverick and Airport. However, it was not mentioned in the presentation. Does anyone have any just comments to just see if there was any proposals for Wood Island?
It's not a, I don't know if anyone can answer Christopher's question, but it's not a question and answer. This is for your.
Oh,
we're here-
sorry, sir.
Oh, that's all right.
The next point I had was in terms of the aggregate development of East Boston, I do support and in as concurring with the previous testimonies and or public accounts supporting this amendment 53 with a few adjustments. I think the basically the grandfathering of proposed sea level
30 seconds, Christopher.
concerns would be slightly unhelpful because the easements on the sea level things were concerns are not going to be beneficial to the city of Boston because of the rising sea level and also the aggregate demand on the Logan Airport. Again, the Logan Airport effects are also would be opportune.
Thank you.
That's
Thank
it.
you. Have a good one.
Sorry, sir.
I'm sorry, Christopher. That's 2
Sorry.
minutes.
What do I have 1 minute or 0 minutes?
No, you're all. That's it. Yeah. Each speaker gets 2 minutes, as I announced at the beginning.
Okay,
Ellie
sorry.
got to speak extra time representing the elected official for that area
Oh, thank you.
to read the letter. Thank you very much.
Okay, next is Meg Grady. Meg, go ahead.
Good day, Commissioner and the board. I am a long-term East Boston resident. I am a small landlord, a preservationist, have been previously served on community boards and also in real estate. So I see this from many different sides. I know my time is limited. I would say that many people who worked very hard on the plan do not feel like the plan has been representative. And there was a lot of unrest with the plan. One of the main components was preserving single families. We certainly have a plan right now that benefits developers, and we have a plan that adds subsidized housing. We are already seeing instances where elected officials are pressuring developers to add housing units to get to the affordability component. We also see absolutely no tangible accountability for landmarks status. Obviously, given the news this week, that might be part of it. And also, we don't feel like our elected officials have a true understanding on market value, and we are going to see our homes and our single families torn down and replaced by 3-family condos, which has a very large effect on owners who live here with their families and have a longer term trajectory of raising their children here. This is very important in Orient Heights, which has many single families, and now the lots are going to be able to be zoned very differently and adding 2 and 3 families. It's already come up in proposals. And also an example
Go ahead.
in Eagle Hill with 2 single families replaced with 3 condos and rentals, and this is not at all affordable. These are market rate. So I just want to go on record to say that the plan did not appease many people here, and we have very large concerns on existing fabrics within our historic neighborhoods and also single families.
Thank you, Meg.
Okay, next is John, and I'm not going to try to announce your last name, John, so go ahead.
John, if you're talking, you're currently muted.
His time's not running. You there, John? Anyone else, Jeff? We can get back to John.
No, he's the last one, Mr. Chairman. So, oh,
No.
there I think he can talk.
Go ahead, John. John? One more time, John, you there?
All right.
All right. So that's it, Jeff?
Yeah, Meg Grady has her hand raised again. I'm gonna ask her to talk again just to see
Go
what.
ahead. Go ahead, maybe we can get John on. Go ahead, Meg.
Okay. Go ahead, Meg.
So sorry. Just another example with these town process meetings, working parents, working people, he had to drop because he has another client call. So I'm so sorry.
Take minutes. You know.
He was extremely involved. I'm sure he'll submit written testimony, but he's been an amazing advocate for the community on this and definitely has some strong points. And I'm so sorry he didn't have time to speak.
Okay, Meg, thank you. It's tough.
That's it, Mr. Chairman.
All right, so let's close out public testimony. We're gonna close out this portion of the hearing and enter our business session. Questions, comments? Motions?
I guess I would like to say, Jay, that I thought it's a very comprehensive document. I think the process that got the document to the zoning changes that we're being asked to consider was extremely well done. I think it's important to hear people like Meg and others. I mean, there can always be additional enhancements to this over time, but I also think that this is such an important move forward that it's definitely needed. And then as time goes forward, perhaps things like the ability to create more housing or enhance how some of the uses integrate with mixed use component areas and the waterfront, the DPAs, evolve, I think can all be, dealt with over time, but this is a great first start. So I think it's important to acknowledge comments like Meg has noted, but to also recognize the significant positive impact adopting this would achieve. And so I'm very much in support of it. And I'll yield the floor now to others to comment too before making a motion, unless someone else would like to make it.
Thanks, Jill. Jill, any thoughts on the letter? I thought the letter was more geared towards the zoning
The
board. of-
ZBA. No, I think that it was important, but the other thing the letter did was it emphasized the amount of public process that has gone into this for 5 years. So I thought that was very interesting. The issues related to the BPDA, I mean, we can't, to the ZBA, we really as a zoning commission can only adopt these changes which reflect what we think represent 5 years worth of work with the community and the elected officials and appointed groups and community involvement. Over time, you know, variances occur because things are unusual and unanticipated, but issues like ZBA practices are really not part of our purview. We really can only do what we think we can do to adopt the best zoning amendments and code enhancements that preserve the form and components of the neighborhood and hopefully reduce ZBA activity. But I just don't. I'm not sure that that's something we can actually dictate here. That's something in other city agencies, but hopefully this will get us, to a point. I do believe after going through this all, very comprehensive materials and well done group, I agree too. This really, I think, takes us light years ahead of where we are. So hopefully ZBA will not be as big of a factor.
Anyone else?
If you don't, I would just add, look, I mean, I think I would also echo the fact that there's been a lot of work, a lot of feedback, a lot of really sophisticated planning in a very complicated neighborhood for many, many reasons, between the waterfront, the shape, the geography of the neighborhood, the airport, everything that is going on in this neighborhood. So I think it's really comprehensive, impressive work by the team. So I just want to commend you guys on that, and the engagement and the planning over 5 years is impressive. And I think to Jill's point, I also agree that, you know, simplifying the zoning, delivering a more predictable process for uses and development makes a lot of sense. And is very good, and I support that. I think my only concern here overall is that I don't think it provides the opportunity to add enough housing, given the demand in the neighborhood, given the population growth in East Boston. I think it's a little bit more limited in scope and trying to preserve the context of the neighborhood in a little bit. We could have gone, I think, a little bit further in terms of providing more opportunity to do that, because I think ultimately, if you don't provide enough housing and the population is growing and scaling, you're going to have this continued affordability problem in this neighborhood specifically, but citywide as well. And I think we need to think about, to the point of some of the comments of, you know, and I think, you know, trying to preserve or protect single family zoning, I think that's exactly the wrong approach. And I just want to be clear and on the record of that. I think that doesn't work in a city that's growing. And that's why we have to get to the point where we're building more housing at scale. There's different ways to do it, and there's different mechanisms, of course, and different areas that serve and the capacity to do that in a better way. But I do sort of just want to be on the record here. I think we have to be thinking about as a city, how we're actually building enough housing at scale in the right places to ease this housing crisis that we do have. An affordability crisis that's driving population out of the area. So that said, I support this. I think it's great with the predictability. I just wanted to go on record and saying that I do believe we should really be looking for ways to develop and provide the opportunity to build more housing at scale. That is very much needed in not just in East Boston, but other parts of the city as well. Again, that said, I do support this, and I do commend the great work of the BPDA, all the feedback considered and planning that has gone into this.
Thank you, Michael. Anybody else?
Yes, if I can, Jay.
Go ahead, Drew.
I totally agree with Michael's comments. I commend the work of the BPDA as well, and I know how difficult these issues are, but we need to be thinking, and as I know the BPDA does, about citywide issues as well as local issues, and housing. What the demand and need for housing is extremely important, and I wish that we went a little bit further with this to be able to provide more housing. At the same time, I understand community concerns as well. I will support this, but I'm hoping that in future plans we can have even more focus on adding the opportunity for additional housing. It's extremely important.
Thanks, Drew. Anybody else?
Mr. Chair, I would make a motion that we approve text amendment application number 521, map amendment application number 773, Articles 2, definitions, and 53, East Boston Neighborhood District.
I second that motion.
The motion is second. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, we'll do a roll call. Jill Hatton,
Yes.
Michael DeMella,
Yes.
Nelson Arroyo,
Yes.
Drew Leff,
Yes.
Aisha, who's been with us since just after we started, Aisha Miller,
Yes.
Midori Morikawa,
Yes.
Ricardo Ostrich,
Yes.
and Jay Hurley. I vote yes. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8-0. Congratulations. Good luck. Good presentation. We'll move on to our next hearing. This is a hearing before the Boston Zoning Commission to consider a petition for the approval of map amendment application number 779 and the petition for approval of development plan for plan development area number 150. 1033 to 1055 Washington Street in the South End. This hearing was duly advertised April 1st in the Boston Herald, and the Boston Zoning Commission hearing on petitions upon will first present their case and subject to question by members of the commission only. We are taking support and opposition at the same time. If you're planning to testify, please take the time to verify that your computer microphone is active. Click the hand icon on your Zoom control panel. This will signal staff you'd like to speak. When your hand is raised, your hand icon will be blue. If you're calling into the meeting and would like to testify, please dial *9 to raise your hand. When I call for public testimony, a member of the staff will announce your name and allow you to speak. You must unmute your microphone. Your webcam will not be active. Please give your full name, any group affiliation, announce whether you support or oppose the petition. Each speaker will be allowed up to 2 minutes. If necessary, I will advise you when you have 30 seconds remaining. At that time, please summarize your remarks so the meeting can continue and others may be heard. Finally, the proponents are allowed a brief 5 to 10 minute period for rebuttal if they so desire. Please begin the presentation.
Thank you, and good morning, Mr. Chairman and members of the Commission. My name is Sarah Peck, and I'm a Senior Project Manager in the Development Review Department at the BPDA. We're here before you this morning to discuss the proposed development plan for Planned Development Area number 150, 1033, 1055 Washington Street, and the associated 1033, 1055 Washington Street project. The 1033, 1055 Washington Street PDA development plan is located on an approximately 2.1 acre site at 1033, 1055 Washington Street in the South End neighborhood of Boston. The development plan envisions the construction of 2 new buildings containing approximately 588,000 square feet of gross floor area, including 6,400 square feet of retail space, with the remaining building area as office and research laboratory. The project also includes up to 353 vehicle parking spaces located in a below-grade garage. The development team filed their project notification form on February 7th, 2023, followed by a supplemental information document on June 27th, 2023. The development team then filed a draft plan development area development plan on May 2nd, 2023. The BPDA hosted 3 public meetings and 2 IAG meetings between March 2023 and July 2023 to review the project and the PDA development plan. These meetings were advertised in local neighborhood newspapers, posted to the BPDA's calendar, and an email notification was sent to all subscribers of the BPDA's South End neighborhood updates. The proposed project received approval from the Boston Civic Design Commission on December 5th, 2023, and the BPDA board on March 14th, 2024. At this point, I would like to hand it off to my colleague, Ted Schwartzberg from the Planning Department, to present the planning context for the project, followed by a presentation from the development team. Thank you all.
Thank you, Sarah. Ted?
Thank you, Sarah. Good morning, Chairman and members of the Zoning Commission. I'm here to present 2 slides on the planning and zoning context that guided staff review of the proposal. My name is Ted Schwartzberg. I'm Assistant Deputy Director for Zoning Compliance at the BPDA. This proposal is located in the Economic Development Area North Subdistrict of the South End Neighborhood Zoning District. The site is also located in groundwater conservation and coastal flood resilience overlay districts. The local neighborhood plan, Harrison-Albany Strategic Corridor Plan, was codified zoning by the Zoning Commission in January 2012. At the time the plan was created, the area was carried large parcels hosting primarily commercial and surface parking uses. The plan neighborhood zoning seek to activate this portion of the South End with a balanced mix of commercial and residential uses. Accordingly, the regulations here include a zoning mechanism to allow a dimensional bonus to proposals providing affordable housing or cultural space. The plan also recommends the introduction of new interstitial streets and pedestrian connections to break down the scale of larger blocks created by the 1950 New York Streets program. Next slide, please. Proposed uses anchored by lab and office are consistent with the uses envisioned by the area's plan and zoning, and the proposed dimension and design are aligned with the density bonus provision of Article 64 for PDAs that provide affordable cultural space. And finally, the proposed publicly accessible open spaces and mid-block pedestrian connection fulfill public realm goals from the Harrison-Albany Corridor Strategic Plan that are encoded in this parcel's underlying zoning. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to the proponents to present their proposal in more detail. Thank you.
Thank you, Ted.
Thank you. Thank you, Ted and Sarah. Good morning, Chairman Hurley and Boston Zoning Commissioners. My name is Barbara Boylan, and I am here from the Drucker Company. And
excuse me, is it Barbara?
Yes.
Did you just? I don't know if you could speak up a little. I'm having a hard time hearing you. I don't know if anyone else.
Okay.
Thank you.
Try. Let me move my mic. Is that better?
That's much
Is
better.
Oh, thank you. It's my
Thanks,
mic.
Bob.
I'm sorry. Good morning, Chairman Hurley and
Yeah.
Boston Zoning Commissioners. My name is Barbara Boylan from the Drucker Company, and I'm here today with Ronald Drucker, Stephen Fessler, and our architect, David Manfredi. As mentioned by Sarah, following an extensive community process with community and neighborhood support, we're here today for the PDA plan approval. And I would like to mention a few of the economic and public benefits of this project before I turn the presentation over to David. In the community benefits, there's linkage of approximately $7.5 million, $6.3 million for housing, $1.1 million payment for jobs. There's approximately $4 million per year of new property tax revenue. And job creation, approximately 400 construction jobs and approximately 900 permanent jobs at various income levels. We also have the open space at 142 Shawmut Ave, which we received tentative designation at the BPDA board December of 2023. And as mentioned, there's a public accessible pedestrian plaza connecting Shawmut Avenue and Washington Street, as always conceived in the Harrison-Albany strategic plan. There's affordable community innovation space on site and also a monetary contribution to the Boston Local Development Corp or the Mayor's Office of Arts and Culture. And in the public realm streetscape improvements, we have approximately $800,000 plus a $200,000 transportation mitigation payment to BTD for approximately $1 million in benefits. Now I'd like to turn the presentation to David Manfredi. Thank you.
Thank you, Barbara. Thank you.
Thank you, Barbara. Good morning, Commissioner, Chairman Hurley, and members of the commission. I'm David Manfredi from Elkus Manfredi Architects. Next, please. The site, as you can see in orange, is located in the South End between Washington and Tremont, mid-block between Herald and East Berkeley in the L shape in the red terracotta color. The next, please. Today, existing conditions include a one-story building formerly occupied by Verizon and surrounding surface parking. The cutout piece of that L is actually occupied by two sites, the Lucas condominiums and a parcel that has been historically owned by the BRA. Next, please. We have proposed two buildings. They are mixed use to the extent that there is retail, food and beverage on the ground floor and office/lab above. The plan has very much been shaped by the planning principles of that Harrison-Albany corridor strategic plan. And that plan very clearly states the desire to restore the east-west connections through this corner of the South End that was known as the New York streets, and make connectivity all the way from Albany to Harrison to Washington and on to Shawmut and to Tremont. And you can see what we're very simply trying to do is create two building sites, connect Traveler across Washington on a kind of diagonal to Shawmut that then connects to Millicent Way, and Millicent Way connects all the way through to Tremont. Very much in keeping with the major planning principles related to the New York streets and related to that Harrison-Albany corridor strategic plan. Next. You can see here, first of all, the ground floor plans, the commitment to active edges, especially on Washington, especially on Shawmut and along this corridor. Retail and restaurants, relatively small lobbies. If you look very closely, you can see the ground floors are raised in order to accommodate the resiliency requirements of the site. Active uses of fitness, and in fact, we also have in each building affordable civic community space as required by the enhanced FAR for the site. I'll point out just two other things. There is only one curb cut on Shawmut. That is access to loading on the south side of the site. The egress from that loading is then onto Washington. There's no pedestrian passenger car access from into that building from either street. All pedestrian cars and access to loading to the north building, you can see in the northeast corner, you see an arrow in Washington Street. And that is access to parking for the north, for loading for the north building and parking for both buildings. You see the ramp that goes down. It accesses two levels of parking below grade. That parking will egress back onto Washington Street through the same curb cut. I make a point of this because we spent a good deal of time and have conformed to the requests by both BPDA and Boston Traffic to limit any interruption onto the pedestrian continuity of both Washington Street and Shawmut. The other thing you'll notice is something called 142 Shawmut Avenue. That is an empty lot that has historically been controlled by the BPDA, by the BRA actually, now known as the BPDA, to be controlled by the Drucker Company with a commitment to include that as open space connected to the site. It will be designed by Mick-Young Kim, a landscape architect, as part of the open space plan, and it will be programmed with significant engagement with the surrounding neighborhood, as promised to that surrounding neighborhood. Next, please. Showing you a section, which is a little bit unusual, but I want to make one single point. The allowable height here is 150 feet. And if you look at the dimension all the way to the left, you can see that from grade, it's 150 feet, and there's a 20-foot mechanical penthouse above, which in the world of life science and lab buildings is low. It is, in fact, fully compliant with the city's new rooftop guidelines for mechanical equipment in lab buildings. And it reaches that compliance by pushing approximately half of that mechanical space into the building that is under what is defined as roof for that building in order to be fully compliant with those guidelines. Next, just several views. This is a view from Traveler Street. I'm looking west. Washington Street is in the foreground, and you can see the two buildings. The south building, clad in brick, very much the vernacular of the surrounding and historic South End neighborhood. The north building, while the proportions are very similar, the building is clad in a metal panel, and we're clearly making the distinction between our connectivity to neighborhood south and neighborhood north, which has seen significant growth in new building since the introduction of the new zoning in the Harrison Albany strategic plan. You can also see the space between the two buildings, and I'll point out at the base this gesture that really is intended to welcome pedestrians through that passageway, which will be fully publicly accessible 24/7. Next, please. I'm just zooming in a little closer. You can see that passageway through, pedestrian lined with edges, and the architectural gesture to make that as welcoming a passageway as possible. If you go to the next, please. I'm now looking on Washington Street Southwest, so the north building is on your right, the south building is on your left, and beyond you can see 80 East Berkeley, which is another previously approved design proposal by the Drucker Company. And then finally, one more, actually maybe two more, the courtyard that you can see once you pass between the buildings, the space will open up. You can see the Lucas building on the right, and you can see the wonderful pedestrian views to both the new Hancock or 200 Clarendon and the old Hancock building. And then finally, one more, a view from Sharman Avenue looking east with the Lucas on your left, the south building on your right, and the passageway. And again, bringing those same architectural gestures out to Sharman in order to introduce that same welcoming gesture coming from the west as well as from the east. Thank you very much for your attention.
David, can I just ask a quick question?
Sure.
And I saw it in the materials too. The passage, the bridge linking the two buildings. Can you just note, why you're doing that? But then also, I think in the pictures it's transparent, and I guess that the commitment to transparency in your plans, maybe just addressing the functionality and the design of that bridge briefly.
Sure. The intention, and as it was presented to BPDA and to BCDC, is the bridge will be a function of tenancy, meaning that very often in these life science buildings in which there's a pair or sometimes more, the desire by tenants is to expand horizontally in order to maximize their connectivity on a larger floor created by connecting two buildings. It is raised up to the 6, 7, and 8 in order to make the passageway as visible, as open as possible. It is very transparent, and the commitment is to make it very transparent. And it will only be constructed in the event that tenancy supports that kind of functional necessity between sides. And that is how it was presented to BPDA and BCDC.
Okay, thank you. So then it'll depend on if the building is pre-leased or not. That might not even be built.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
And that concludes our presentation.
Thank you, David. Any other questions, comments from the commission? No. All right, seeing and hearing none. Any public testimony, Jeff?
We have a couple of raised hands, Mr. Chairman. Minor Perez. Minor, go ahead.
Morning, Anna.
Thank you, Jeff. Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, good morning. This is Mina Perez representing hundreds of union carpenters that live and work throughout the city of Boston. I first want to give kudos to the developer for great community outreach. The Drucker companies not only are one of our best, but very responsible developers, and they always work and try to accommodate the public needs. That's the reason why we're enthusiastically in support of this project at these difficult times. We're also very confident they are a developer with resources to be able to take this project off the ground once it's approved. So with great respect, we ask you to vote on the affirmative on this request. Thank you.
Thank you, man.
Okay, next is Mark Delacio. Mark, go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes, Mark.
Good morning, everybody. Yeah, my name is Mark Delacio, business agent for Carpenters Local 327 in Boston. And I just want to reiterate what my colleague Minor just said. We're very much in support of this project, and the Drucker Company has a proven track record of providing quality buildings in the city of Boston. So again, we just want to be on record as being in full support. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark.
And Michael Davey. Go ahead, Michael.
Good morning, everyone. I also am going to piggyback on Mark and Minor's recommendation to approve the project. I'm a city resident and a council representative of the Carpenters Union, and we wish to include on the record our full support of this project. This allows our journeyman and apprentice members the ability to earn good wages and benefits, and at the same time participate in the continued improvement of the South End. Appreciate your time.
Thank you, Michael.
David Goldman. Go ahead, David.
Good morning, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak. I live directly next door at the Lucas. I am a direct abutter and look out onto the proposed project. And I just want to commend the developer for an extraordinary amount of community outreach that they've done. They've met with the residents of our building numerous times and have been extremely responsive. The change to the neighborhood, getting rid of the one-story sort of stucco building that sits there now in the empty lot, is going to be a huge improvement that we all look forward to. And the pedestrian passageway from Shawmut Avenue through to Washington and then across, it extends into the ink block, is really desperately needed. There's a lot of senior citizens who live across the street at Castle Square.
So, Mr. Your call.
Sorry. And having a pedestrian way provides a safe passageway for the residents across the street to make it to the ink block, into the markets and the shops that are there. So I just want to go on record in support, and I know that most of the people who live at the Lucas, I believe probably all of them, but I don't want to say that, are also in support. Thank you.
Thank you, David.
Hey, Jennifer Pink. Jennifer, go ahead.
Zoning board, I'm offering my support for the project as both a former resident of the South End who is long familiar with all the vacancies and underutilized spaces along Washington Street and that corridor, but also as the chair of the Boston Center for the Arts. We're in support of the project and look forward to deepening our relationship with both employees who work there and the corporate entities who will occupy the space and become members and patrons of the Boston Center for the Arts, which we believe play a vital role in making the South End the place that it has always been and we hope will continue to be. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Jennifer.
That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Jeff.
Hold on. Everyone, if you would like to speak, please raise your hand now. Don't wait until the last second, okay? There was somebody who jumped on. Ted Beatrice, go ahead.
Yeah, I support it. I'm a resident. I live at 32 Travelers Street. And I think both architecturally, the building's terrific design and the jobs they're bringing to the neighborhood, businesses, both from construction workers and permanent workers, is a great thing for the South End. So I support it totally. Thank you.
Thank you, Ted.
All right, that's it, Mr. Chairman.
This point, we're gonna close out public testimony and enter our business section. Any questions or comments from the commission?
I just wanted to also comment that I thought that the arts and civic space on the first floor to me is a really positive
Bill,
addition
hold
to
on for a
this.
second. I don't know whose mic is open, but somebody's having a party. We were uninvited.
No,
Thank you.
I just wanted to comment quickly that I thought that the first floor activation on this project for the size and magnitude of the buildings really, I think, was a very, very positive aspect and fits in so well with the character of the neighborhood and the ability of the spaces to have this arts and civic component to it as well as the retail, I thought was very, very well done. And I just wanted to mention that because I think David mentioned it briefly, but I think that to me was one of the positives of this, just given the scale and mass of breaking it down and fitting it into the neighborhood well.
And I would agree with that as well. I think, and as a resident of the South End myself, I am excited to see this project. I agree, Jill. Both the connectivity and aspects and the ground use aspects are really, really great. Also, it's nice to see continued expansion of the kind of live, work, play aspects here, bringing in more life sciences as well near the housing, near the retail. It's really, really kind of bringing a lot of excitement and just making a great place to live and work in the neighborhood and the city overall. So I would commend that. And with that, I'll make a motion to approve map amendment number.
So I have my hand raised and I try to be respectful and everyone's just jumping in. But I have my hand raised, Mr. Chair.
You can't see. Hold on, I can't see everybody. There's too many rectangles, too many boxes here. I can't see everybody's face and hand. That's not a problem. I'm sure Michael will yield for now.
Absolutely.
Go ahead.
Well, thank you. I actually just wanted to commend David on what has been said prior as far as the open space and the cultural space on the design level, David. It was, to me, it stood out to me, and I just wanted to kind of make note of that. And it's always good to hear from our colleagues in the Carpenter Review.
Thank you, Aisha. Michael?
I am happy to go back to making a motion. I make a motion to approve map amendment number, application number 779, development plan for plan development area number 150, 1033, 1055 Washington Street, map 1P, South End Neighborhood District.
Second.
Motion and second, any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, do a roll call. Jill Hatton,
Yes.
Michael DeMella,
Yes.
Nelson Arroyo,
Yes.
Drew Leff,
Yes.
Aisha Miller,
Yes.
Midori Morikawa,
Yes.
Ricardo Ostrich,
Yes.
and I vote yes. 8-0. Congratulations. Nice project. Good luck.
Thank you.
Thank you. We'll now go into our last hearing. There's a hearing before the Boston Zoning Commission to consider a petition for the approval of map amendment application number 780 and a petition for the approval of third amendment to the Northeastern University Institutional Master Plan. The hearing is duly advertised April 1st, 2024 in the Boston Herald. And the Boston Zoning Commission hearing on petitions, the proponent will first present their case and subject to questioning by members of the commission only. We are taking support and opposition at the same time. If you plan to testify, please take the time to verify the computer microphone is active. Click the hand icon on your Zoom control panel. This will signal staff that you would like to speak. When your hand is raised, your hand icon will be blue. If you're calling into the meeting and would like to testify, please dial *9 to raise your hand. When I call for public testimony, a member of the staff will announce your name and allow you to speak. You must unmute your microphone. Your webcam will not be active. Please give your full name and the group affiliation and announce whether you support or oppose the petition. Each speaker will be allowed up to 2 minutes. If necessary, I'll advise you when you have 30 seconds remaining. At that time, please summarize your remarks so that the meeting can continue and others may be heard. Finally, the proponents are allowed a brief 5 to 10 minute period for rebuttal if they so desire. Please begin the presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and Commissioners. The proposal before you is for the third amendment to the Northeastern University Institutional Master Plan and a related map amendment associated with the BPDA board-approved Article 80 large project at 840 Columbus Avenue in Roxbury. The proposed project is for a 23-story, approximately 445,000 square foot dorm building with a community-focused ground floor providing subsidized retail and small business support space and programming. The proposed project will include up to 1,370 dorm beds, allowing the university to exceed their commitment of 1,000 new beds made in their current IMP. The proposed project also includes extensive updates to the public realm and infrastructure in the vicinity of the project site. The associated third IMP amendment would add the proposed project to the current institutional master plan. The amendment would also add the building formerly known as the South Tower of the Sheraton Boston Hotel to the list of university leased properties to bring that site in compliance with the terms of the PDA amendment this commission approved earlier this year. Finally, the amendment would allow for a future interior renovation project at the Renaissance Park building adjacent to the 840 Columbus site. The associated map amendment removes the project site from the plan development area number 34 overlay to allow its incorporation into the IMP area. The BPDA held several public meetings and task force meetings through the course of the review for this project, and all public meetings were advertised in local newspapers and online and well attended. I now turn it over to my colleague Ted Schwartzberg from the BPDA zoning compliance team to discuss the planning context considered in the review of this project before the development team begin their presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Quinn, Commissioner Hurley and members of the Zoning Commission. Ted Schwartzberg, Assistant Deputy Director for Zoning Compliance. I'll present 3 slides on the zoning and planning context for 840 Columbus. During the Article 80 review, staff review was informed by the underlying zoning, Northeastern's IMP, and the Roxbury Strategic Master Plan, as well as neighborhood context, including the location at a key intersection of the campus and the Roxbury residential neighborhood, as well as other large development projects nearby, such as Drexel Village across Tremont Street and its proximity to transit. Next slide, please. Specifically, the 2013 IMP for Northeastern notes 840 Columbus as a quote area of interest and contemplates a potential hotel or conference center for this location. Northeastern has since shifted the proposed use and design in response to market demand and feedback from community, elected officials, and city agencies. Next slide, please. Proposed ground floor uses at 840 Columbus are consistent with the underlying Greater Roxbury EDA zoning. Though the proposed dimensions exceed this underlying zoning, with today's vote, 840 Columbus would become subject to Northeastern's IMP. In terms of planning context, the proposed project delivers the student housing needed to fulfill Northeastern's commitment to provide 1,000 new student beds, as noted by Quinn earlier, and the proposed project would transform a surface parking lot across the street from a major MBTA station into much needed on-campus student housing. And with that, I'll now turn it over to the school and the development team to present their project in more detail.
Thank you, Ted and Quinn. Good morning, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners. My name is Victoria Abelina, and I'm an Associate VP for Campus Planning and Design at Northeastern.
Morning.
Next slide, please. Great, thank you. I am joined today by my colleague, John Tobin, VP of City and Community Engagement, Jason Wills from American Campus Communities, who are our partners on this proposed institutional project, and project architect, David Manfredi. We're here today to share a proposed project for our student residence hall that is located at 840 Columbus Avenue in Roxbury. And as Quinn and Ted has already described the program, I'm just going to jump right into the request, but David Manfredi will walk you through the design and some of the programming in the project. So the Northeastern Institutional Master Plan was approved by the BPDA board on November 14th, 2013. And last fall, this commission approved our request for a 2-year extension. This is the last open amendment, the third amendment to Northeastern IMP, and we intend to file our next IMP this summer. We're currently in pre-file discussions with the BPDA. In addition, the proposed third amendment includes a lease of the building at 39 Dalton Street, whereby we will lease approximately 250,000 square feet within the building, and the Renaissance Park renovation project consisting of interior renovations of floors 5 through 8 of the Renaissance Park building by converting that space, which was the formerly leased office space, back to university uses. We're also requesting to amend the map, the Roxbury Neighborhood District 6A, 6B, 6C, as described in our map amendment application. We originally filed this project in November of 2019, and this project has undergone significant public review. Informed by the public in that process, the ground floor, which I want to elaborate on, will serve as a dynamic center for community engagement through economic development programs and initiatives. This initiative will consist of multiple programs that will address critical needs and areas of interest expressed by the community in the following 4 categories: educational access, jobs and workforce development, small business support, and building capacity for existing community organizations. As an academic and research institution, can we go to the next slide, please? And then David will talk to that slide as well. As an academic and research institution with the largest student population in Boston, we're stewards of our built environment and take pride in the design and quality of projects we propose in the city of Boston and in our global network. We're also committed to mitigating our impact on city's already tight housing market. And therefore, this project is very important to us as it will fulfill Northeastern's 2013 IMP commitment to provide an economic development program at the project site, as well as deliver and exceed the 2013 IMP goal of providing a total of 1,000 new beds. We believe that ground floor programming and design that provides connectivity from Tremont Street through the site to Columbus Avenue will be transformational for the site that is currently a parking lot, and will provide a much needed public realm improvements and connections to Northeastern campus and the adjacent neighborhoods. We would like to thank our task force, the BPDA, and city staff, and BCDC for the thoughtful feedback that helped us shape the building design. And I would like to now hand it over to David Manfredi from EMA to speak about the project, the public realm, and landscape. We'll be available to answer your questions.
Chairman Hurley, members of the commission, good morning again. I'm David Manfredi from Elkus Manfredi Architects, and I will stay on this slide for just a moment. The site, as Victoria has described it, is the orange color at the intersection. You can see not just of Melnia Cass and Columbus Avenue and Tremont, but really the intersection of these 2 neighborhoods, the intersection of the university and the intersection of the Nubian Square neighborhood. And as she pointed out, there has been a great deal of activity and more to come. You can see in yellow are the buildings that are either under construction or proposed, the Crescent Parcel and Whittier Choice, new proposals on the P3 site, and you can see that connectivity all the way back to Nubian Square. In the light blue are parcels, properties owned, controlled by Northeastern University, including the new science buildings, as well as new residential renovation and improvements at Carter Field, and really the connection back to the campus on Huntington Avenue by that spectacular bridge that crosses the Green Line. You can go to the next. The design proposal has really benefited greatly from a lot of interaction and engagement with the neighborhood, with BPDA and with BC. The building has been reduced in height. It has increased in beds. How did that happen? Well, we did remove floors 2 through 5 that were previously academic, have been converted to residential, so that those floor-to-floor heights are smaller, and the building came down in height. But we were able to increase obviously the total number of beds. You can see that the building is actually separated into 3 elements. One on Tremont that is 13 stories, one on Columbus that's 20 stories, and one on the interior of the site, which is 23 stories. And our goal from an urban design point of view has been to separate those 3 elements by the massing, but also by material and by color in order to provide this kind of assemblage of parts that connects to the scale of the buildings that is being developed all around us on Tremont. If you go to the next, right in the foreground is the 13-story element, which is clad in a warm red brick with accents of a darker brick you can see on the corners. The 20-story component on Columbus is a kind of buff brick. The tallest element is precast concrete panels. The goal here is to draw all of our materials out of that vernacular design vocabulary from the neighborhood and very much connect to that heritage. You can also see, and I'll zoom in a moment, street level is very open, transparent, accessible from all sides. As the place that Victoria described, where these two neighborhoods and communities can come together across a whole series of different kinds of programming on that ground floor. Next, please. There are several important views. This one is from Melnia Cass looking west, obviously one of the focal points when you arrive to the site or you arrive into these two connected neighborhoods. And you can see the three parts. You can see the relationship of the lowest part to the Renaissance building adjacent to it, and then the greatest height and density pushed into the farthest from the public ways and kind of into the center of the block. If you go to the next, this is a view from the south on Tremont. You can see the police headquarters on the left, International Village beyond, and then just that little sliver of the light color of precast is the building that we are talking about today. And then if you go to the next, this is a view from Columbus. You can see Northeastern's new science building on the right. You can see beyond, looking all the way down Columbus International Village, and you can see the proposed building in its three parts and how those three parts step and how those three parts are defined and delineated, colored, even in different ways in order to break them apart. You can also see again that base, that ground floor, and even 2 floors on Columbus. Very active uses, creating a base to the building, but also creating an invitation to welcome all, meaning both the university population as well as the surrounding neighborhood. And then one more, please. This is a sidewalk view at Melnia Cass and Tremont. The building has 3 entrances on all 3 public streets. That is Tremont, Melnia Cass, and Columbus. And the intent is to be open, even to be openable or operable, is inviting everyone into a destination for a variety of uses. And also as a cut through, because just to the west is a real additional destination, which is the Ruggles Square Station. If you go to the next, this is a view from Columbus and Melnia Cass. Again, you can see International Village to the right. You can see the active uses on the ground floor and even on the second floor where there are student amenities that spill out onto that terrace between those different component parts. And the building very intentionally defines that base in a different way in order to enhance that sense of different programming, welcoming to the surrounding neighborhood as well as the university population. I have one more slide, if you can go to that. This is the ground floor. And you can see the surrounding streets, Tremont on the bottom, Melnia Cass on the right, Columbus at the top of the page. And you can see the footprint of the building, which is basically white, and how the footprint is shaped to define those 3 entrances, one on Tremont, one on Melnia Cass, and then one on Columbus. And obviously, different people coming from different directions for different uses, all are welcome. Improvements to not just the sidewalks and the landscape zone, but really creating an enhanced landscape zone. You can see dimensions on the right side against at Melnia Cass that are at different places as much as 40 feet from the face of building to curb. You can see a lay-by. We know students take a lot of Ubers and Lyfts, and so there's a kind of lay-by that take that traffic out of the flow. Improvements with the grade separated bike lanes on Melnia Cass, as well as continuation of the bike lanes on Columbus that continue on to the east, and a significant improvements actually in the street section of Melnia Cass. That concludes our presentation. Thank you again for your attention.
Thank you, David. Thank you to all. Go ahead.
Thank you, David. If we'll go to the next slide, I do want to make a few comments. Good morning, Mr. Chair and Commissioners. My name is Jason Wills. I'm the Senior Vice President of Development for American Campus Communities. American Campus Communities is a long-term owner of student housing, and we're fortunate enough to have been Northeastern University's partners since 2019 when we opened the Lightview building. A few things I wanted to point out about this project. One, it is apartment units for the students with living rooms, private bedrooms, and full kitchens. And that is the product that upperclassmen students are looking for. And this is what is going to bring them out of workforce housing. This project is going to pay full ad valorem taxes, and it is a full Boston-based union labor project as well. And then lastly, and David spoke about how the building is inviting from three sides. It's going to include co-working spaces, a small business networking group, locally owned food and beverage opportunities. We're really excited about what that's going to look like. And then lastly, I just wanted to say from a sustainability perspective, this is an all-electric building that's going to be both LEED and Passive House, as well as Fitwel certified. We are extremely pleased with the collaborative process that brought us to this point, and wanted to actually thank not only the city staff, but the neighborhood and community members who participated in this dialogue. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jason. Any questions, comments from the commission? I don't know who's in charge. If you could take the presentation down, it'd be helpful. Thank you. Any questions or comments from the commission? Hearing none. Public testimony, Jeff?
I have no there we go. Mina Perez, go ahead.
Okay, Mina.
Thank you, Jeff. Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, good morning. Once again, Mina Perez representing hundreds of union carpenters that live and work across the city of Boston. First, I want to give a quick shout out to John Tobin and Great Community Outreach. And it's nice to see that for many a decade and a half, the city has been asking for a student housing from colleges and universities. And it's nice to see Northeastern stepping forward to the plate, as always, in building, which is going to alleviate the needs for housing for the rest of the city. So because of that, Carpenters Union like to go on record and support, and their commitment to always building with union labor as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Mina. Any other public testimony, Jeff?
No more raised hands, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. At this point, we'll close that portion of the hearing out. We'll enter our business session. Questions, comments from the commission?
Mr. Chair, I would be happy to make a motion that we approve map amendment application number 780, the third amendment to the Northeastern University Institutional Master Plan, 840 Columbus Ave, map 6A, 6B, 6C, Roxbury Neighborhood District.
Second.
Motion and second. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, we'll do a roll call. Jill Hatton?
Yes.
Michael DeMella?
Yes.
Nelson Arroyo?
Yes.
Drew Leff? Drew?
He's on the phone.
Okay, we'll come back to Drew. Aisha Miller,
Yes.
Midori Morikawa,
Yes.
Ricardo Ostrich,
Yes.
Jay Hurley, I vote yes. Is Drew still on the phone?
Yes, I am. No, I'm back. Sorry. This is
You
an
with us?
emergency. I vote yes.
Thank you, Drew. 8-0. Congratulations. Well done. Good luck.
Thank you very much. We appreciate it.
You. Next meeting, Jeff. I know we got some.
Yeah, the next meeting is gonna be
May,
the
right?
8th. Jay, are you available on the 22nd, May 22nd?
Let me look right now, buddy. Hold on.
And Mike, are you available as well?
Yes, I should be.
All right,
I am available.
awesome, great. So we'll punt that meeting that was supposed to be on the 15th to the following week for May 22nd.
Very good.
Hi, Jeff. So there's no meeting before the 22nd, right?
May 8th,
Oh, okay, thank you.
yeah, May 8th, and but you'll get that information next week.
And Jeff,
Thank you.
I think, Jeff, I think the 8th was always a conflict for me when you put the
Yeah.
schedule out, so.
I think Mike.
Yeah, me as
your
well.
Conflict too, right?
Yep.
All right.
All righty.
Thank you.
All right,
Thanks.
thanks everyone.
Thanks, guys. See you
All
later.
right.
Thank you. Have a good week, everybody.
You too.